Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Scala, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight. And now your host, Scala.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill.
All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. I am your host, Scala, coming to you live from South Florida. Beautiful day here in South Florida. Feel sad for some of my friends up north. I have a daughter who lives up in Ohio. A little cooler there than it is here. It was a beautiful day here. My gosh. I think the high today was maybe 72. Nice cool breeze. Other than the being saturated with the chemtrails, which finally cleared up at around 6:30, 7 o'clock tonight. So tonight is a very clear, very cool night out here. Very enjoyable. Kind of want to be out there almost with all this nonsense that's going on today. Let me start out by, unless you've been asleep under a rock, let me start out by telling you it's been a phenomenal week for our president. I'll let this gentleman just kind of tell you.
All right, it's been a monumental week for the president. It kicked off on Monday with a landslide victory in Iowa and a debacle for Democrats. Then he delivered a passionate State of the Union, was acquitted on both articles of impeachment, and announced the death of a terror leader. Top it all off with a stellar jobs report. As Democrats look to reclaim the White House, can they beat his record?
Well, how do you top that? There's a lot of, depending upon how you look at it, there is a lot of positive things happening. But when all is said and done, there's still a system that is broken. There's still a system that needs to be restored. And that's what we're going to be talking about for a while, because to me, it is absolutely vital that if we're going to have a future, a positive future, let me be more specific, because we got a future whether we like it or not, but a positive future, a future that would allow my children and my grandchildren the freedom that has been stolen from us. That's really what I'm after at this point in my life. I'm really concerned that what is happening, regardless of how good it is, don't misunderstand me. I think this president has done an outstanding job, but you can only go so far if the system isn't right. And that's my challenge, is to express to people that we're not living under the system that was originally designed. And as a result of that, you are seeing people within our government, I don't even know how to describe it. They're just insane, literally. And how it is that they remain in office is beyond me. But yet it continues. So I don't know who to be more upset with. Be upset with them for the kind of behavior that they are exhibiting and the laws that they're pushing into place, which are causing law-abiding citizens to become felons if they decide not to follow the law, and they've been law-abiding citizens all their lives. They've never been in trouble, and all of a sudden these people write on a piece of paper that you have to do this, even though what they're telling you to do is against their oath. You have to do this, and if you don't, you're either going to end up in a cage or you may end up dead. Hey, it's already happened. One state, I think it's New Jersey. I may be wrong. Forgive me. I'm not going to say it's New Jersey. I know it's one of them. One of those crazy states. They're talking about door-to-door confiscation. Not that it's possible, but hey, the fact that they're willing to speak of it should scare the bejeebies out of you. To the point that we need to start doing something, guys. Because we have no protection. I read an article a while back where I believe it was the Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken, made a decision that the police are not here to protect you. The police are here to keep peace. Well, they don't do either. Not to take anything away from them, because I have friends of mine who are police officers. They're some of the finest men I know. But unfortunately, they are not the standard. They're the exception. And as a result of that, we see what we see with the police departments. We're not. There's no way in the world that you can be a free person if you understand the fundamentals of slavery. If I say to you, come work for me, and I'm going to pay you whatever it is, it doesn't matter. So we'll make it simple. We'll make it $10 an hour. You're going to work for me 8 hours a day. That's $80. Now Uncle Sam comes along and says, hey, you working for Scala, huh? Hey, that's great. Let me have some of that money. Now, in some cases, people are working the first 3 months of the year to do nothing more than pay taxes. That's not free. You're not free. That is, to me, I don't know if this is, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know if this is a Webster dictionary definition, but to me, if you come work for me and I pay you whatever I pay you, and someone else comes along and says, we want some of that money, and has you believing that it is your duty to do that, even though it's not, there's something wrong with that picture. You're not free. When someone can take from the sweat of your brow, you are not a free person. It's that simple. Now, if you're one of those fortunate people who knows how to manipulate money and make money on top of money, that's a different story. But if you're working, the sweat of your brow is yours, all yours, 100% yours. But they would not have you believe that. As a matter of fact, if you look into the subject, you'll find that income tax is voluntary. You see down at the bottom when you sign, it says, please sign here. But don't pay your income tax and watch what happens, even though it is voluntary, and it has been found by higher courts that it is voluntary. You are not required to pay income tax. Well, don't pay it. Watch what happens. You telling me you're a free person? Are you telling me you're a free person when the government that is supposed to be serving you demands from you that you buy something, and if you can't afford to buy it, or you don't want to buy it, because of course you're a free person, so you should have that option. If you don't want to buy it, then they're going to fine you. So regardless of what decision you come to, your government is going to cost you money right out of your pocket, other than the common way that they take it from you in the form of taxes, fines, penalties. The system is broken. The system needs to be restored. The more that I learn about what has happened to us back in the late 1800s, the more I realize, as insane as things are, makes sense. It's an oxymoron, but that's what happens when you come to the realization that the system that you're under is not the system that was intended to be for us, that was intended for two specific reasons: for us to be free and independent. And neither of those are true today. We are so dependent today on so many things. The value of having relationships with your neighbors and your friends, the ability to rely on someone if you fall, all has deteriorated. And it is my personal opinion, it is all by design. Because there is a small group of people, in comparison to the rest of the population, that wants utter control over us. Oh, Rascala, you're back into the conspiracy theories. They want control over you, Rascala. Where do you get this insane idea? Gee, I don't know. When you have time, if you're not familiar with something called the Georgia Guidestones, go look them up. Somebody was very serious about some goals. They erected these monuments in I don't know how many languages, 11 languages I think it is, engraved into this monument. What their plans are, these people that you think I'm a conspiracy theorist that I speak of, exactly what their plans are for this planet in the near future. And I am telling you without question in my mind, they would have made a gigantic jump towards that goal had Hillary Clinton won. Now, the very first line on the Georgia Guidestones, the very first thing they want to do, they're in there by order. The very first line. Now, I can't tell you how many people are on the planet. I get conflicting numbers all over the place, anywhere from 6 billion all the way up to 9 billion. What difference does it make? Because they want to reduce, if it's 6 billion, understand that 6 billion is, how to explain it, 600 million. 600, I can't even explain it now. Okay, so we're going to go for, it takes 1,000 millions to make 1 billion. So it would be 6,000 millions. That's what it would be. 6,000 millions, because I'm going to break it down into the way they want to end up with the number they want to end up with. 6,000 millions, they want to reduce that number to 550,000. Excuse me, forgive me, 550 million. Let me correct that. 500 million. They want to go from 6,000 million to 500 million. So it doesn't matter how many people are on the planet. Whatever that number is really doesn't matter. They want to reduce the population of this planet by over 90%. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration. A whole lot of people they want to get rid of. Now, Riscala, that is one of the craziest ideas I've ever heard of. I'm glad you think that way, because this is how these people have been able to perpetuate the evil that they have done to innocent people for generation after generation after generation. The time now has come to wake your behind up, because they're literally in your face now. They're showing you what they want for the future of our country. These are psychopathic, absolutely insane people that have found their way into our government. And because of their checks and balances that really don't exist, because the system is broken, again, I'm back to a broken system. Because of that, these people continue to get away literally with murder. If it were up to me, I would charge the legislators who were responsible for the red flag law, and I can't remember what state it was in, where they sent the sheriff out after a man to collect. Now, this man had done nothing wrong. I don't think it was even had an arrest record. Went out to collect his weapons from him, and he refused, and he ended up dying. I'd hold that legislator responsible for the murder of that man, if it were up to me. But what else? Said that wrong. What else is happening? Do you think that the police got in trouble for what they did? They're just doing their job. We're just doing our job, Riscala. It's just our job. It's just part of the problem of this whole system. Some of these people know what they're doing is wrong, but they don't have a choice. Well, they do have a choice, but they won't make it. The choice would be to leave the system. But they have a family to support. So they feel stuck, glued into this slot, if you will. And if they don't perform, then they lose their job. That's the truth of the matter. I don't know how many of them feel that way. So if the system is broken, and someone comes along and says, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Jones, Mr. Jones, we have a way of a possible resolution to this insanity. And that would be the restoration of the states, as the states at one time were sovereign. That no longer is the truth. At one time, there was a militia. Now you say the word militia, and people have been conditioned to think that that's something bad. Well, it could be, but not necessarily. We don't understand. Let me back that statement up. I don't understand how some people can be so ignorant, and I don't mean that in an insulting way, just that they're just not educated in a particular subject. And this subject is something that has direct control over their lives. How can you be interested, really? I mean, I had a couple of different emails saying, telling me, talk about this and talk about that. What difference does any of that make? If the system that we're in is wrong, it's just not right. And as long as it's not right, and I know that it's not right, I'm not going to be happy. Look at what's going on today in different states with regard to gun control, quote, gun control. It's not gun control. It's just turning law-abiding, just like the war on drugs. There was no war on drugs. There was a war on people. Turning people into felons for nothing more than possessing a plant. It's insane. And some people have been brought up and conditioned to believe that it's a very dangerous thing. It's not at all. And you see what's happening around the states. More and more people are waking up to this lie and deciding to legalize it. But for how long and how many people suffered under the lie, the big lie, and some of them still feel that way today. I have people that tell me, Rascala, some of the things you say, it's just, there's no way that a group of people that large could continue carrying on a conspiracy, carrying on a lie, and not letting any of it ever out. I just told you about one. We are lied to on so many fronts, from religion all the way to our parents. Our parents were lied to, and the lies they believe are passed on to us, and then we pass them on. As long as we live in a system that has been usurped, it has been overcome, it has been shifted, skewed. I can't think of enough words to describe what has happened. But if I tell you that the system is messed up, the system is corrupt, the system is not the system that we are supposed to be living under, and you cannot recognize that statement, we have a very, very big problem. Now, some people have been conditioned to think, Rascala, what difference does it make? I got nothing to hide. Let them look. I tell them about the television. I tell them about the Samsungs, how Samsung has made a public statement. If you own one of our TVs, our smart televisions, and it's plugged into the internet, be careful what you say and do in front of your television. Oh, that's just conspiracy theory. Besides, I don't have anything to hide. What difference does it make? It makes all the difference in the world. I don't have anything to hide. But it's none of their damn business. That's the point. They don't have the authority. Do you understand? That's my point. It's not that I'm carrying on some kind of criminal activity. It's that they are doing something they're not allowed to do. Am I allowed to do things that I'm not allowed to do? Because the first moment that I do that, they're on my back. They're either going to find me or they're going to put me in a cage because I don't follow their system. Somewhere along the line, our freedom, our true freedom, has been stolen from us. The government does not have the authority to force you to do anything. That's not what the purpose of the government was to do. But people, it's been going on for so long, people think, hey, this is what they're supposed to do. I have to rely on the government. I can't do this, I can't do that without the government. I need my government support every month. I have to have this, I have to have that. That's not what the government was intended to do. All of those other activities, we were supposed to work with each other to help each other to resolve all those activities. That was the kind of society that helped build this country. People relied on other people. People built relationships. The government was only there to make sure that whatever rights, God-given rights that we had, their whole responsibility was to see to it that those rights were not infringed upon, that they were not violated. What do we have today? Day by day, they find different ways to violate those rights, whether it's freedom of speech through censorship, whether it's the right to protect yourself through the Second Amendment, and all of these different gun legislations. What's happening in Virginia should scare the bejeebies out of it. Anybody who has any idea of how important it is to be able to defend yourself, what's going on in Virginia is an absolute communistic move to completely disarm the citizenry of Virginia. The only thing I can think of that will be legal after all is said and done with the insanity that they're trying to pass, I think is going to be a revolver. I'm not even sure about that. If you have a weapon that can handle a magazine, that weapon is no longer legal. How do you like that? These people will continue to infringe into your private life as long as you let them. It's one of those old sayings where you give them an inch and they take a mile. That's one of them right there. They will not be happy until they have absolute total control over our lives. And there are many people who feel as I feel, hell no. So what does that leave us with? Are we going to end up in a war? Because that's one of my greatest concerns. We have a bully who is pushing us and pushing us and pushing us. At what point do we say that's enough? And the moment that we do, the bully cries out, I'm fighting in self-defense. Give me everything you've got. It's a horrendous idea. It's a nightmarish idea. It is something I truly don't care to think about. But it is a reality. There are many people who feel as I do. This government has overstepped its boundaries. This government has no authority to do much of what it's doing, particularly in our personal lives. There are many people, I would estimate in the millions, who feel as I feel. We're tired of it. We're sick of it. I'm watching a government literally implode upon itself, literally. And the people think it's no big deal. And they're in your face with the implosion. They don't care. They want more and more division. The president stood up. He made a lot of very positive, what I felt anyway, maybe I'm wrong, a lot of positive things that he brought out about this country. Yet you have almost half of the people there refusing to acknowledge any of it. And little of it, well, let me back up a minute. There were times when he was acknowledging little people, that young lady who was going to get that scholarship. There were other times he was acknowledging families, that mom and her 2 children waiting for her husband. He has pointed out time and again all the wonderful things that we can do as Americans. Yet the other side would refuse to stand and acknowledge any of that. I tell you, there is an implosion. There is a civil war already in place. It just hasn't reached the point of people literally firing bullets at each other. It's going strong. That's going to be the next step if we don't do something. If you're one of those that thinks that this president is going to resolve all of our problems, you're in for a rude awakening. You haven't heard a word I've said about this system. I don't want to take anything away from this man. I believe he works hard, and I believe he believes in what he's doing. I think his heart is in the right place, but it doesn't matter how or where your heart is. If what the system that you're working is, it's the best word, it's not the true system. It has been corrupted. It has been usurped. It has been overthrown, if you will. The way that I see what is happening to us, particularly in the area of censorship, the first 2, censorship and the ability to defend yourself, are under massive attack right now, all throughout our country. And we have no defense. It appears at least we don't. You look what happened in Virginia. An estimated, I don't know, anywhere from 10 to 60,000. I don't know what the true number is. I'll say 10,000. I'll just say 10,000. People showed up. All the people who are so afraid of guns, who swear it's guns that kill people. We got to get rid of the guns. We can't have guns. Crickets. 10,000 people in one place, the majority of them armed. Not one person was shot. Not one person was punched. There wasn't any trash left. The place was left as clean as it was before they showed up. They can't have any complaint whatsoever. And yet what happened? They continue to pass more and more legislation to take that right away from the people in Virginia. And what's worse is that is spreading across the United States. Florida's another one. Where I'm at is another one, where they have a red flag law, absolutely against the Constitution, absolutely against the responsibilities of this government. Now, some of them may have their heart in the right place. Oh, you know, Rascala, if we pass a red flag law, we could have stopped that Parkland shooting. I don't care what you tell me. There's no way in the world you could have stopped that Parkland shooting. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it was a shooting here at a high school here in South Florida, not far from where I'm at, that just kind of escalated the gun control thing here in Florida. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you do. We had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to stop that young man if he was the one who did what they say he did. We had repeated opportunities. I think when I counted them all up, it was over 11 times that people had warned people that this young man was in trouble here and there and again and again and again. And you didn't do spit. And because of that, now you blame, according to them, him for a massive shooting at a high school. And the first thing you do is come after people who are law-abiding citizens and say, if we hear anything about you, we're coming for your guns. So if somebody gets upset with you, and I had a guy on the show just a couple of shows ago, stand-up guy, law-abiding citizen, a former law enforcement officer from years back, out to serve papers, went to serve somebody. The guy he served, I guess, worked for the city or something, or maybe a jail. I don't recall the exact story, but he was in some kind of position to do with almost some kind of law enforcement. Wakes up one day and finds the SWAT team at his house. And they were ready to take him out. It is an absolute miracle that he kept his wits about him and handled it in a calm manner. Because when they showed up, they weren't dressed for a party. They were dressed to kill. They're dressed the same as any of our soldiers are dressed. The only difference is the insignias that they have on their uniforms. So don't tell me there's not a war on us. Who's going to protect us? At one time, we would have had a militia that would have had the responsibility, had it come to that, to do this job, to perform this duty. The difference would have been the militia is local people, all that know each other. It would have never, ever got to the point where anybody showed up at this man's house. They would have laughed at that man who filled out that paperwork, who repeatedly lied on the paperwork. And guess what happened? Nothing to him. He lied on paperwork. He swore under an oath that what he was saying was true. Nothing happened to him. Yet they could have easily completely ruined this man's life. Red flag laws are absolutely unconstitutional. They usurp the entire system, one of the finest systems on this planet. It's called due process. Somebody accuses you of something, then you have the right to stand before your accuser and defend yourself. They don't do that anymore. You see what's happening with the president. They wouldn't allow him the right to defend himself. What makes you think you're going to allow you? What has happened in front of our eyes should be concerning to all of us. And no matter how you try to skew the story, the truth of the matter is we have lost much of our freedom. And I really don't see any way of getting it back other than restoring that which was stolen from us. A legal process using the very system that would attack us, that continues to attack us, using that system against itself. There's something about saying about a house divided cannot stand. We would use the very system that is causing us to have our freedoms stolen from us against itself. So they wouldn't be able to say it is unjust. The documents exist. The history is there. God, I hated history when I was in school. I just thought that was the biggest waste of time. My two worst subjects in school, history and geography. Who the hell cares where the water is? Just leave me alone. History and geography. I didn't get a kick out of either one of them. Space, oh, that was cool. But I truly regret the history part because I don't know. I am very ignorant when it comes to history. I'm learning very quickly. But that's how that these people, I believe, have gotten away with what they've gotten away with because we don't know our history. But by golly, if you want to sit down around the cooler and talk about, I don't know, football or baseball or basketball or the latest hero that played one of these sports that passed away, and not to take anything away from him, they know all about it. They know all the specifics. Then try to tell them or try to have them have a conversation about our government. Have a conversation about how these people who are supposed to be our representatives they're wolves. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. They're thieves. They're criminals. Beyond that, they're psychopaths. When someone sees all of the dishonesty, all of the actions that these people have taken, yet they walk freely and smile in your face, and as soon as you turn your back, they got the dagger out. And it seems like they're almost untouchable. And it's frustrating, to be honest with you. It's very frustrating. Well, is that not enough evidence to tell you that something is very wrong? The system is broken. The system is not working for you and me, generally speaking. Because if it were, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't be talking about a governor that has gone so absolutely berserko insane that he's going to disarm his citizenry even after 90% of the counties in his state said, we don't want what you're given. And he continues. And following him are the same kind of mentality here in Florida. Now, I have a crazy idea for you. This throws a lot of people off. They think it's too way out there. But I will tell you that I base it upon some pretty hard evidence, in my opinion. I base it upon the opinions of professionals who had investigated it, and it is their determination that it was not what we were told it was. And that this kind of thing has happened time and again in our country. I believe that it is by design, that it is a tool that is being used to disarm the citizenry. The shooting that happened here in Florida, they accuse a young man of shooting his fellow students here in Florida. I don't know whether he did or not. All I know is that I watched a video of a young lady who said this young man was walking alongside of her and she heard shots still being fired. So maybe he did shoot somebody and then joined a group of people that were leaving. Or maybe he didn't shoot anybody. I watched a video of them where they find this young man. He passed out in the grass. He didn't put up a fight. He wasn't even awake. So how is it just a few minutes earlier than that, he killed all these people? He talked to this young lady and they had some kind of conversation while shots were being fired. And then shortly thereafter, I think within an hour, within a half hour maybe, He's passed out on the grass. There was a shooting in Colorado, Aurora, Colorado, inside of a movie theater, where a young man supposedly threw a flashbang grenade and opened fire on people. They found the young man just a few minutes after the shooting, not very long after the shooting, in his car, passed out. The next day, this young man couldn't even hold his head up. He was so whatever he was on, he couldn't even hold his head up. And yet I'm supposed to believe the night before he had the wherewithal and the mental capacity to kill all these people. There was a shooting at an elementary school called Sandy Hook. After a lot of research, after a lot of shaking my head, I really wasn't sure what to believe. And I met a gentleman by the name of Wolfgang Halbig, a former federal agent, former Florida Highway Patrolman, whose responsibility of all things was to examine schools' security and determine whether it needed to be upgraded or not. Halbig had a funny feeling about what was going on at Sandy Hook. So he decided to go all the way up to Sandy Hook, because he still lives in Florida, and was treated like a criminal. For what? For asking questions. What about this? What about that? What about the other? They literally harassed the man out of the state. You know, I go back to their wonderful saying, you've got nothing to hide, then what are you worried about? So I believe the last three examples I gave you are commonly known in warfare language as false flags, that they weren't what they appeared to be. People died, yes. But that's not the meaning of a false flag. The meaning of a false flag is when someone attacks in a certain manner to achieve an end result. The attack almost always is on some kind of innocence, whether it is children or adults. It is always on some kind of innocence. Now, it is my personal opinion, if we were living under the system that we were supposed to be living under, none of that would occur. Because all of these shootings, in my opinion, I don't have anything written concrete, but I certainly have the opinions of a lot of professionals that back it up. My opinion is they are all manufactured. They are all to, what's the word I'm looking for? Continue along the line of an agenda. That agenda is to disarm the people. When we talk about two particular subjects that I don't understand how people can't see through the lie. One, gun control. If you think for a moment that removing guns from law-abiding citizens is going to make you safer, that is one of the most foolish ideas I've ever heard of in my life. If you think that the passing of these laws in order to bring about more security is in your favor, you're absolutely mistaken. And there is data, and by the way, numbers don't lie. There is plenty of data that will tell you that places that have guns that have been banned or under strict control have high crime. Where places where guns are not under such a strict control have low crime. They never talk to you about how they're going to get rid of the guns from the criminals. They only talk to you about how they're going to get rid of the guns from the law-abiding citizens. Now think about this for a minute. The two subjects I was speaking of are guns and vaccines. They run parallel. Somehow, if you have two people, one vaccinated and one unvaccinated, the unvaccinated person somehow is a threat to the vaccinated person. Now, if vaccines do what they're supposed to do, and that is make you immune to these sicknesses, then how is it that the person who is not vaccinated presents a danger to you? I'll go back to guns. How is it that the people that live in an environment where guns are not under such a strict control have less crime than the people who live in an environment where it's extremely difficult to get a weapon? And in many cases, some of these environments, more people die over a weekend than, gosh, I can't even begin to tell you. Chicago's one place that comes to mind. 30 some odd people one weekend I'm thinking of. I don't know if it was last weekend or not. It may have been a couple of weeks back. 30 some odd people shot in 1 week, over a weekend. It's a place where it's supposed to be guns, no guns. We're all safe here. Yeah, what happened? Because the system that we're living under is not the system that was intended for us to live under. Because if the more that I come to the understanding of that system, the more I realize we would have a militia in place. The militia would be taking care of this. We wouldn't ever have the problem of an escalation like we see in Chicago, because it would all be handled at the local level. We wouldn't have the federal intrusion that we have today. We wouldn't have a government that is literally in just about every corner of our lives. But as long as people support the system, and as long as people don't realize what has happened, then the people who perpetrated this and their bloodline and their generation will continue to get away with it. You just think about the insanity that we're witnessing today for a moment. Just think about that for a moment. Here a president stands to give the State of the Union. I gave what I thought was a fairly nonpartisan. I really didn't notice anything about Democrats or Republicans other than Democrats refused to acknowledge any of it. I thought it was a fairly nonpartisan speech. It seemed to be pretty positive, brought out a lot of positive things. And yet you had almost half of the people that were there, representatives of supposedly the United States, in complete and utter disagreement. So we're witnessing a government that is literally imploding. And little is being done about it. Little to none. How this Speaker Pelosi is still in office is beyond me. How this man Schiff is still doing what he's doing is absolutely beyond me. How he has a security clearance after he has openly lied to America repeatedly. How is this guy still around? I don't know. Don't go away. More to come.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show on the LNM Network. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
Grace has some pretty stellar arms, like Serena Williams good, but her face is pretty disgusting.
Someone please tell him to go back into his closet and leave us alone.
Britney's face is so stupid and I hate her so much. It's like a scientist created her in a lab to annoy humanity and didn't even do that good of a job.
Megan reminds me of a troll doll that came to life intent on killing us with her stupidity.
Why is Grace's head so big? It definitely has nothing to do with how smart she is and probably everything to do with how bloated she is.
He's so funny. Just kidding. Who would find this disfigured flamingo funny?
Never post a selfie of yourself. You look so ugly.
The only reason you have so many views is because we think you're a freak and we can't look away.
Megan is the main reason that the world sucks so much.
I would rather get cancer than listen to another Trevor Moran song.
You are a mistake. You should have never been born.
Drown yourself in a shallow puddle, please.
Wow, I hope she's sterile.
These really stopped being funny a long time ago.
You're so much more than the things that people say about you.
Those people have no right to say cruel things to you to make themselves feel better.
It's okay that you sound different than everyone else.
That's what makes you so special.
We will not tolerate it.
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 Every day, people make me feel like I stand out simply because of the way that I look.
Every day, people make me feel small.
Every day, I face the cruel words of bullying.
And every day, people tell me that I'm brave for enduring this humiliation.
But we're not the brave ones.
It's the ones that say no to the bullying.
The witnesses.
If we all join together, there's nothing that we can't do. We will no longer be the silent majority.
When we see bullying online,
We will let the world know that we're going to take action with the eye.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
Our actions will overpower cruel words.
I am a witness.
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 There is power in words.
But it's nothing compared to the power of the actions that we put behind our words.
Visit eyewitnessbullying.org to learn more.
I am a witness, and so are you.
I'm gonna stand by you.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
We have ignition. Strap in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Miss Scala, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight.
red pill.
And now your host, Riscala.
Take the red pill. Take the blue pill. Take the red
All right, we are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. I am your host, Riscala. We are coming to you from sunny South Florida. Of course, it's not very sunny right now. But it was a very sunny day today. Very beautiful day here in South Florida. And one of the few days that we look forward to, that I look forward to anyway, because there are days when I walk out the front door and it feels like a sauna. But I guess you get used to it. Like the people up north, they get used to the cold. Anyway, I wanted to take a moment to thank, of course, WCET FM 101.7 Columbia Talk Radio. Thank you, WCET, for the home base, if you will, our mothership. You can find us at www.wcetfm.com. You can listen to us there. You can call in to listen, those of you who have unlimited calling, 701-719-9704. And High Point Radio, thank you, High Point Radio, 1690 AM. They are out of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. They also carry the network. Thank you there, High Point Radio. Greatly appreciate it. And KYAH AM, 540 AM, Utah's Talk Authority. They also carry some of the shows for the new WCET FM network. Thank you, KYAH. Greatly appreciate it. Anyway, we are a subscriber-supported station. We need your help. Any of you who are in the position to make a donation, please do that. And just so that you understand, I'm not asking anything from you. I don't do myself. I'm a subscriber. I've been a subscriber to this network since it first started because I believe in what we're doing. I don't get paid to do what I do. I do this because, again, it sounds corny to some people. I do this for my kids and my grandkids. I do this because I've been around long enough to see how things have deteriorated in this country. And it concerns me deeply because there are children who are alive today, their entire life on this planet, we have been at war. So war to them is normal. War is not normal, my friends. War is abhorrent. I can't even think of words to properly describe what war does to people. So if you help us to continue bringing you different bits and pieces of information, which I believe can help you. It's not just my show. We're a 24/7 network, and I think the majority of the time we are live. The majority of the shows are live. So it's all of those shows. Late Night in the Midlands has brought so much to so many people. And in the whopping subscription fee, which I think is $5, I don't even pay attention to it. It's all on automatic with me. $5, no big deal. And look at what you get. So if you can, if you're in a position to donate, please make a donation. My personal preference is let's get some subscribers. We get some more subscribers. We get to the point we don't have to ask anymore. I don't like having to ask, but we are in a position where, we got bills to pay. That's really what it boils down to. We have servers, engineers, we have electric, water, just like anybody else. There's bills that have to be paid in order to be able to do what we do. And we can't do it without those who have helped us so far. So please consider that if you would. I think I have, let's see, let me go here. I think this is Milo. Milo, is that you? Area code 704.
It's me. How are you, Riscala?
I tried to pull a fast one on me.
No, you were moving too quick. I had my phone in my pocket and on mute.
So I see.
Took me a minute there. But I'm doing all right. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. What's the weather like up there in North Carolina?
A little chilly, but a lot less windy than it was yesterday and the day before.
I'm enjoying some really, really pretty weather here in Florida. Okay, let me go to, I think this is David. David, is that you?
I think so.
Hot dog.
Last time I checked.
All right. And are you in Tallahassee or are you back in our neck of the woods?
I'm making my way back there.
Okay.
So, yep.
Slowly but surely.
It's been a great week. Great week at the Florida Archives of the state.
Yeah,
a whole bunch of stuff.
I want to hear about that. I've got one more, area code 985. I don't recognize this number. 985.
It is me, your CC.
Oh, it's Doug. He's one of our engineers. Hey, Doug, how are you?
We're we're doing good. I'm just monitoring your system, baby.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, let me go to David real quick. I know that you've been doing some reading there at the archives in Tallahassee. Tallahassee happens to be the state capital for Florida, those of you who are not aware. You want to give me some tidbits? You want to tell me what you found?
Well, it's just been a very illuminating week for me to go through documents, try to get a handle on the stuff that we've learned from Milo and John, Paul, Chrissy, with respect to this whole question of national citizenship versus state citizenship. And when you go and you actually begin to read the story from the actual sources, it just, I don't know, it gives you a whole different perspective on things. And I spent the week going through the minutes of the constitutional conventions of 1861 and 1865, and then going back and reading the Constitution of 1845, which is the last one prior to the Civil War. And one of the things I came away with was realizing that there actually were two civil wars. And I know that Milo will say, of course there were, but I've actually coined a phrase myself that I'm sharing with people. You know how we call them World War I and World War II? Well, I think we need to start talking about Civil War I and Civil War II. And the thing we need to get people to understand, once you begin to understand what's been going on here, is that we're still in Civil War II. And it started in 1867 with the Reconstruction Act. And as I began to go down through and just read some of the changes that occurred in the constitutions after the Civil War as opposed to prior to it, there's a real change that occurred, a real alteration in the way that we even are recognized by our government as citizens. Where before the Civil War, we were called freemen, meaning people that were free with respect to their rights and their powers and their duties and privileges and immunities. And then after the Civil War, we've been called citizens of the United States. And no indication of this concept of being freemen anymore. To me, that was a pretty, it might seem like a subtle thing, but it's a pretty significant thing, because when you understand the legality of it, it has to do with an entire change in the way we're viewed by our government. In one sense, we're viewed as being the sovereign populace. And in the other case, we're considered to be almost the same as we were in England, subjects of the government. We have no real standing to be able to impose our rights and our powers and duties and privileges. And we don't have any immunity anymore. So that was one of the first things that came out of it. But I where do I go? What are the tidbits? One of the interesting things that I learned was before the Civil War, when you were a citizen, in order to be able to vote, you had to be a member of the militia. It was required in order to be a voter in the state of Florida.
Huh.
What do you think of that?
Wow.
I was surprised and it's actually in, I think, Article 4, I believe it is, of the Constitution of Florida. It says in order to be able to vote, you had to be an inhabitant, not a resident, an inhabitant of the state, having your home in the state, and it did say reside, but it had 4 different qualifications in order to be recognized as being in the state, and then you had to be a member of the local militia in order to vote.
Wow.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
It's very interesting. All right, let me get to Milo, because I wanted to ask Milo, are you saying or have you seen or have you read, such as I have come across now, that there's no slowdown in Virginia, that the communists are full bore?
Actually, Rascala, with regard to Virginia, I saw a article, and I can't remember if this was something that Chrissy shared with. I think it was something that Chrissy shared with us on one of the chat groups we're in. That the flagship bill, the big one that originally was, I think Saslaw was the senator that introduced it first, and it was the confiscation. It had to do with confiscating pretty much any kind of gun, like you said earlier, anything except maybe a revolver or a black powder arm.
Yeah.
That went from originally being confiscation and turn them in to being we'll think about possibly just having you register these weapons, and you can pay the government so the government can make a list of who owns what guns.
Yeah.
And then I think the last that I heard, as of this article that Chrissy sent us, I believe, was that bill was facing kind of an uphill battle. It did pass through one hurdle, which was a committee, and I think it was a committee of public safety. But as of at least yesterday, I think its prospects were questionable whether or not it would even pass, and it had been significantly watered down even at that. So now, rather than requiring registration, there are other provisions. Most of the worst provisions were stricken out of it, but there's still other provisions that prevent people from buying or selling or importing new ones. I think it's just they're trying to appease Virginia gun owners right now, by saying, well, okay, whatever you've got right now, you can keep it, and we're not going to make you register it. But then you can't have any more. Virginia can't import anymore. And the magazine restrictions, which are actually of particular interest, although I don't know how much attention people tend to give to those, the magazine restrictions are not any less stringent. Anything holding over 7 rounds or capable of holding over 7 rounds, any magazine is still slated to be outlawed under this bill.
Wow.
And as you know, you can get firearms with 5-round magazines, but most semi-automatic firearms come standard with 10-round magazines or higher.
Yep.
And I don't know what to say about that other than, people should pay attention to that, because, a firearm without bullets is just a hunk of metal. You can throw it at an adversary, but it's not going to serve as a firearm. So when they try to restrict the ammunition, the capacities of weapons, they're aiming again, no pun intended, they're aiming again at the ability of people to make it a useful tool.
Yeah.
And in the context of militia, which you and David have both touched upon already tonight, and we have in previous shows, in the context of militia, no modern military or police force, either, military or police, no modern force of that nature goes running around with a gun with a 5-round magazine.
Sure.
I mean, it's absurd to even suggest it.
Yeah.
So the concept of trying to reestablish states, and in the process of that, of course, also to reestablish constitutional militias and get people as a body, the rank and file of people as a body involved in their own vested authority again, that goes hand in hand with what this, as I call it, the de facto system, in this case in Virginia, goes hand in hand with what that system is trying to prevent. They don't want people, clearly they don't want people to be able to exercise any kind of authority in that manner. Certainly not, backed up by any threat of force or whatnot. And I mean, there's no getting around it. Police are force. Militia are force. Military are force. That is the executive arm of any political body. And whether that force exists in the possession and control of the body of people themselves, or alternatively in the possession and control of a very narrow elite within that society, is really the question of whether or not you have liberty or tyranny. Because any time that I mean, the state, often it is said in sort of libertarian and voluntarist circles, that the state has a monopoly on force. And that's true, it does. But it's one thing to say the state has that monopoly, but it's a whole nother question to ask, well, who within the state, what entity within the state has control over that monopoly on force? Is it, again, reserved to some narrow elite, or is it something that is held in trust and exercised by the great bulk of the people equally? So those are all things to think about when you're looking at these bills that are coming down. And again, I want to reiterate one last thing about this, is that the very system that's proposing and passing these laws in Virginia and any other state that it's occurring in is not a legitimate system. It is not a legitimate form of government. And the proof is there. There's no doubt whatsoever. If you look objectively at the facts, it's not even a question. If you look at the evidence, it is obvious. And David's been doing this now all week. He's been digging in, looking at what there is, in the historical record about Florida. And he can tell you, as well as John Ainsworth can tell you, and Cliff Muncie and all the rest of us that have been in this, and Chrissy as well, we have mountains and mountains of evidence. So we're not proposing that we need to seek remedy within that system. We're not proposing that we need to try to get that system to stop passing the quote unquote laws that it does. The solution, the remedy, is to step out of what is an unconstitutional system and reinstitute constitutional government. Just leave that mess behind. So that's important to bear in mind. It's not that I'm just ranting about what it is that the de facto Virginia legislature is doing, but people have to have the big picture, the whole, comprehensive view here is that what Virginia is doing is a travesty and a wrongness, but it's not a travesty and a wrongness because it's a good system doing a bad thing. It's a travesty and a wrongness because they're good people that are, knowingly or not, part of a system that does not have the sanction of law in the first place, and it's behaving perfectly in character for what it is.
Yeah, like terrorists.
Rascala.
Yeah, go ahead.
Rascala, if I could piggyback off of what Milo just said.
Yeah.
Something that happened during that hearing of that committee that I thought was pretty telling was they took the vote of the committee members. I think there was like 23 or 4 of them. And the vote turned out to be 11. No, it was 20. There was 20 of them. It was 11 to 9, I think it was the count. And after the vote was taken and they voted to pass this bill out of the committee, there was apparently a real loud response from the people in the hearing room. And at that point, and this has to do with a concept called polity, P-O-L-I-T-Y. We have the word political for politics. Well, the word polity is the idea of the people being organized politically. And it really shows how they changed the way the people are organized politically. Because after the people, obviously in that room, were upset about the vote, the chairman of the committee or someone in charge called the state police, the Virginia State Police, to stand stand in front of the legislators, and then the chairman announced, or someone in the room announced, that if the people didn't leave the room rather quickly, that they were going to be arrested for trespassing. Now, think about that for a moment. Who is the governed, and who is the governing?
Trespassing on land that was paid for by taxpayers. The taxpayers.
Yeah,
Well, but not even-
that would be my question is public land. How can you, if it's private land, I can understand it, but if it's public land, how the hell can you do that?
Well, because you can do that. That's the whole point. What we're talking about here is what they can do and what we cannot do. And that is the crux of this whole conversation. The whole issue here is how we have been stonewalled, hamstrung, co-opted.
And that's why it makes sense.
And so what we need to do is help people understand exactly what is going on, and help people understand if you want to continue to be enslaved by those who are the rogue officials, by those who have the control, then just keep doing things the same way you're doing them. And, the thing is, people protested, and they rang their hands, and they cried out that this isn't right. But we've got to go way beyond this. We've got to get to the place where we stand up and say, this is what needs to be corrected, and this is the way that it needs to be corrected. We need to understand what the legalities are. I was in a conversation today with a very good friend who argued that all the time I'm spending going and studying this stuff and spending, it's just a waste of time because all I'm doing is going and looking at legalities. We have to understand what it is that we're up against. And we have to have an ironclad response legally. Not because when we go into the court that they're even going to agree with us, but because we will then be in the position that when we do what we must do, that we're doing it from a position that is eminently and unquestionably legal, if at all possible. And then at that point, we have a place of standing that we can flex our muscles and say, either we're going to be listened to or we're going to take the next steps, which is, as Mao Zedong said, political power growing out of the barrel of a gun, which is the only true political power.
Well, go
ahead.
We're being pushed to that point anyway. That's my fear. Is that my analogy of what I'm seeing today? The government is nothing more than a bully, and it's bullying its power on the people. And the moment the people say, "Okay, we've had enough, and we're going to defend ourselves," the government's going to go, you see, those people are attacking us. Now we have to defend ourselves. So it's completely out of balance. And I could never see a way of returning that balance because it's so corrupt. Once I was introduced to this idea, and once I was told about what happened in the late 1860s, I realized why all this makes sense. I realized why they're able to get away with what they get away with, because this is not the system that the forefathers intended. And I realized that, I knew that from seeing what was going on for some time, but what I didn't know is what had happened and what I was told and and the documents that I've seen regarding how our nation was just totally usurped. It was taken out from under us, in some cases by force. That's not America. So that's why we continue. We're living in the lie, and we continue to live in the lie. And as we continue to live in the lie, we see this insanity literally appearing before our face and saying to ourselves, well, they're not allowed to do that. They can't get away with that. And yet, there they are. They're still walking free. They're still getting away with it. How is that possible? Because we have been deceived into believing that we are living under the system that we're supposed to be, that was intended for us. And that's just not true. It's just not true. And that really, I mean, I can't explain to you in words how that burns me, how it burns the idea of being deceived by people that you place your trust into, and that you give them the responsibility of seeing to it that they are working for the best interest of the whole, and you find out that none of that is true. The whole thing is a lie. It's very upsetting. To me, it's very upsetting. And with the understanding that we have a way out, that kind of relieves the pressure, if you will. Now, sometimes I feel like I'm in a pressure cooker and the top's just going to blow off because of all the pressure that builds up with all this stuff that I see happening. And when I find out that now there's a solution, a very viable and legal solution. It doesn't require violence, and it's just a matter of filing the right paperwork, and we walk away from this insanity. That, to me, makes more sense than wanting to stay in it. Now, what I'm saying isn't going to happen overnight, but it will happen when people understand how important it is that we make this next step if you want to be a truly free people. Because that's really what this boils down to. Go ahead. Somebody said something. Is that you, David?
No, I didn't say anything.
Okay. When we walk away from this insanity, that to me makes more sense than wanting. Okay, you're kind of you're in and out.
Got some feedback from somebody.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're in and out, and I'm not sure who this is. Area code 408.
Oh, hello.
Oh, that's a little better. Area code 408. Your first name?
First name is Ken.
Ken. No, I didn't say anything. Oh, okay. Hey, Ken. Thanks for calling.
Oh, am I on right now?
You're on.
Oh, well, I want to thank you for taking my phone call, Riscola.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes,
I'm getting some, yeah. If you've got something, if you got a radio playing in the background, you got to turn that radio off.
Okay. First name is Ken. How are you doing tonight?
We're doing well. You got a comment or a question?
Oh, I got a comment, Riscola. I've been doing some reading lately about our Coinage Act and how the founding fathers set up. They made, and it's in the Constitution, and it's Article. I'm trying to find it right now. I had it written down, and it's lawful money, and in the Constitution it states that no state shall manufacture anything except gold and silver for our coinage. And that when Woodrow Wilson allowed to let the Federal Reserve slip in, it was the biggest theft in the history of the world.
I agree.
And what I would... Excuse me?
I said I agree.
In Article 1, Section 10, no state shall make anything except gold and silver coin a tender and payment of debts. Now, I'd like to know why all these elected officials we've had since Woodrow Wilson was president, why hasn't that been... It's unconstitutional to begin with. It's put the American people in slavery. It's put us in debt and living on credit. It's been the greatest travesty in the history of this nation. And why isn't this ever addressed and dealt with and the Federal Reserve ended?
Well, the very simplest of answers to that is what I've been saying all along. We're not living under the system that our forefathers intended us to live under. We're living under a deception. That's really what it boils down to. Just about everything that is around us is some kind of a deception of some sort, shape, or form. You mentioned the IRS. The IRS is a Puerto Rican corporation that does nothing more than collect money for the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has nothing to do with our government. Many people think the Federal Reserve is some part of our government. Nothing to do with our government. The Federal Reserve is a private bank. Private, like you and me, private. Can you imagine the mass of money that these people have loaning us money, literally printing money out of thin air and then charging us to use it? Again, the simple answer to all of this is that the system that we're under is not the system that was intended for us to live under. Really is what it boils down to. If we had the freedom that our forefathers designed in place for us, it had not been stolen from us, if we still had that freedom, these people wouldn't exist. It's just that simple. The system would be self-cleaning.
In the fiat money and the inflation rates, why can't, if Woodrow Wilson, if this slipped in on December 23rd, I believe it was 1917, when most of Congress was home for the holiday vacation, there was a few handful of prostitutes.
Yeah. This is how it's always done. It's done in the middle of the night, typically speaking, over the weekend, over a holiday, where people are paying attention to something. It's a distraction. So while the people are distracted, how they take advantage of the people. Again, I know it's redundant, but the truth of the matter is we're not living under the system we're supposed to be living under. That's why this stuff doesn't make sense to you. That's why it never made sense to me until I found out what I found out just, 4 or 5 months ago. That's why none of it made sense to me. How the hell are these people waiting? How is it that you have a private bank, for God's sake? A private bank. Why can't we print our own money? And ever since that we went away from money that was silver and gold backed, our depreciation rate, let me put it to you this way. If I had $1 that I earned back in the 60s, up until the late 60s, I think, if I had a silver dollar from back then, I could buy $13 approximately worth of whatever I want today. That's how they've stolen money from us. That's how they literally worked their way, their wealth into their pocket, our wealth into their pocket. Again, the simple answer to the question is, and it's redundant, but it's the truth. We're not living under the system that we're supposed to be living under. It's all a deception. And what we're offering people is the knowledge that there is a way out. And the way out is that we just don't recognize the system anymore. We walk away from this corruption. And we have a constitutional government that the way it was intended to be. That's how we do it. And it doesn't require violence. It only requires people to use their logic and look at what's going on. Look at what's happening to us today. I'm watching our government literally implode upon itself. I said earlier in the start of the broadcast, I watched the State of the Union. I'm watching half of the government literally sit down for everything that America should be standing for. But they don't want to do that. They want to cause more strife. They want to cause more division. They want to cause more problems than they want to resolve anything. So let them have their system. Keep your system. Do whatever it is that you do. If we had a constitutional republic the way that it's supposed to work, under the guidelines that the forefathers set in place, we wouldn't be talking about any of this. None of this could exist because the system wouldn't permit it to exist. The idea of police coming and beating in your door and finding out, oh my God, we got the wrong house. Well, let's kill them anyway. That wouldn't even be a thought. It would those kind of things just wouldn't exist.
That happened 2 years ago next door. They had the wrong Jennifer Ward.
Yeah. and
I wish I had a video camera.
So again,
the SWAT team came next door. And they beat down the door and everything. You got the wrong place.
A little too late for that. So what David and
how can we have? If President Trump says to make America great again, it'll never happen as long as we have a Federal Reserve.
Well,
it's just
it's
dry.
Again, Ken, it's the system itself. We just have to walk away from the system. This really the system is so corrupt. The system is wrong. It's not the system that we're supposed to be living under. And the best solution.
How's it come back? The American people need to stand up in one voice. No, I can't go out there by myself because they'll probably zap me. Mm-hmm. But if people, American citizens, get tired of being raped, get tired of being lied to, and get tired of living in chains, we need to stand up and end this and get back, like you said, to our constitutional republic. You know, Nancy Pelosi made a comment after the State of the Union. She said, well, this is not how a democracy runs. Well, we're not a democracy. It's not even in a constitution. We're a constitutional republic, like you said. And a democracy is just another misnomer for communism.
Now, you said something that was very interesting. You said American citizens. Now, see, prior to, say, 6 months ago, I would have said, yep, you're absolutely right. But since I've learned what I've learned, part of the problem that we're encountering, and I'll ask Milo to comment on this, part of the problem that we're encountering today is that we are American citizens. We're not supposed to be. If the way I understand it is, we should be state citizens. The states should hold a sovereignty. And as state citizens, we have the adoption, if you will, of being an American citizen, but our citizenry is to our state. Our loyalty is to our state. Now, Milo, correct me, or if I'm wrong, or if I'm right, or...
No, I don't. There's nothing to correct. You're absolutely right. The whole concept relies on the premise that the people of the states formed the federal union and created the federal government as their agent. And it was to act in very strict, limited, enumerated, the enumerated powers in Article 1, Section 8. And, so as state citizens, the preamble to the Constitution says, we the people of the United States. And it's not we the people, end of story. It's not we the people of America, we the people of the United States. And the way that they intended it, the proper way to understand that in the preamble is that we are the people of each of the respective states, and in our sovereign capacity as state citizens, we're creating this document, this charter of a federal union. And so sovereignty resided with the state, and the federal government was subservient to those states and their people and served their purposes. But then, as you've mentioned, and as we've talked about before, of course, in 1867, that was flipped on its head. It was turned completely upside down through a series, really, of acts of treason. And, what the founders had intended originally to be the paradigm under which this union existed was transformed into something almost completely anathema to what their intentions were. It was completely upsought and reversed, and now we have a system where the states are really little more than administrative subdivisions of a national government, and the citizens are no longer citizens of the states, but they are citizens of the United States. That is to say, the national central authority, citizens of Congress. It's a new form of citizenship, and Congress created it. Therefore, that status and those who claim it are subject to the supreme jurisdiction of Congress. And I quote there, those aren't my words. Those are the words of the Supreme Court. So,
well, then, let me ask you, sir, to bring our constitutional republic, I kind of get the impression that you're alluding to the fact the only way it's going to happen if we have another civil war.
No.
We're already in a civil war.
Yeah, I would certainly concur with that. We're definitely already in.
We're in Civil War II. We're in Civil War II and have been since 1867. It has never stopped. In fact, one of the things that we've learned, I'm going back and trying to find the actual document, but there's a War Powers Act that was implemented at the Civil War that has still never been rescinded. Okay? And the point is that there are legalities that keep us in a state of war that allows for emergency powers of the Congress to continue to be applied to us. We are still in a state where we are not able to have all of the rights and all the privileges that we're supposed to have, because at any time they can be taken from us. Take, for example, the National Defense Authorization Act and the fact that we can be retained as combatants or as terrorists at any time without any due process of law can be taken away. Any citizen of this country right now can be taken away, and they can be incarcerated outside of the country without any attorney or even notification of your own family.
That's true.
So the point is, if these things are so, where do we have any legal basis upon which to protect ourselves? That's the problem. And unless we get back to recognizing, as Milo has helped me to learn, that has to be.
Lost you, Dave.
I think Dave was breaking up there, but I think where he was headed with this, if I might presume to finish his thought in his absence.
Unless we have a state standing. Because
there
militia
you go.
is a state institution.
David,
we lost you for a minute, David.
Dave, we lost a lot of what you said. 'Cause I think you're traveling. Are you traveling?
I'm back, I guess. Am I back?
You're back. Are you traveling?
Yeah,
Okay,
I have to.
Yeah. You're kind of.
Sorry, I guess I went through a little down point. But did you hear me say that we don't even have state citizenship by which we can put back the militia of the several states? We need to restore our governmental position as citizens in order that we can even do what the people of Virginia want to do in Tazewell County. They're not even in a position at the moment that they can give themselves what they want. That's how the thing has been flipped on its head.
That's how they deceive.
Right. It all has to do with your standing, your citizenship standing.
Well, gentlemen, what is we can sit there and get these traitors up there in the Democrat Party, which needs to be fragmented and ended, as far as I'm concerned, because most of them are card-carrying members of the Communist Party. Now, if we would have had the communists back then during the Founding Fathers' time, I'm sure they would have had a clause for these idiots.
They wouldn't be around.
But what I'm trying to say is that we can't let this continue. It's going to come, whether it takes armed conflict or not. How long do we let this go on before pretty soon the guns are? Once they get the guns, then that's it. We're done. We're cooked. And
that's the whole thing. They can't get the guns. I mean, that's not a realistic idea. Any of them who say we're going to take your guns, what they're saying is we're declaring war, open war on you. That's really what they're saying. They know doggone well there are many people who feel as I feel. If you come knocking at my door saying that I'm all of a sudden overnight I'm now a felon because I possess a weapon that can handle a magazine, it doesn't matter how many go in the magazine. In this particular example, they were trying to pass a law just as long as it could handle a magazine. It was going to be illegal. How many people out there have a weapon that they use that has a magazine? I'm guessing, but I think well over 80% of the people use a weapon that utilizes some kind of a magazine.
Yes.
And so
you're right.
So the ability for you to defend yourself, and if you understand what the Second Amendment was truly about, it wasn't about hunting. It had nothing to do with hunting like so many people want you to believe. It was about the ability to have a balance between the citizenry and the government, and that balance has not existed for a very long time. And the result of that imbalance is what we're seeing today. We're seeing the system that is corrupt. We're seeing a system that does not care about its citizenry. I can show you example after example after example how they don't really give a hoot about you and me. Just keep paying your taxes, shut your mouth, and go to work. That's all they want from you. And make sure that you vote for the right party. That will just make everybody happy. But again, regardless of what we do, regardless of how hard we try, the system itself is not the system that was intended for us to live under. And that's why when you look at it through that perspective, that's why a lot of this stuff that they do, which is insane, which they have no right to do, they do and they get away with. That's why the idea, like some of the stuff, I would want to just put my hands on my head and hold my head together because I felt like my head was going to explode. How the hell can they get away with this stuff? Well, it's because of the system. And the system that we are living under is a deceptive system. You mentioned the money. You mentioned the Federal Reserve. All of that. None of any of that would not exist under the original system that was designed for us to live under, because a small group of people like that could not have made that decision to begin with. It would have been up to the individual states to decide together. They wouldn't have been able to pull off that shenanigan. So again, it doesn't make sense. You're absolutely right. But once you understand that the system is intended to be this way, really, if you think about it, that's why these people get involved in it. They're parasites. And they stay with the system as long as they can possibly stay, because they milk themselves off of the system while you and I work our brains out trying to make ends meet, yet watch them literally break the law and walk free. Where if you and I spit on the sidewalk, away we go, because the system is corrupt. That's why.
Well, Riscola, can our constitutional public be restored? I mean, is that a possibility?
David?
Yes.
Can the
But
Constitution?
we have to do a right thing in a right way, not a right thing in a wrong way. And that's what this is all about, what we're discussing and beginning to formulate a plan. Because the problem we have is, through the Reconstruction Act of 1867, the constitutional republic was co-opted. I call it a surreptitious subversion. And you ask the question, why did this happen? It's because I bring it back to one word: enslavement. Remember, there's three different powers that a government and the people within the government have: the power of the purse, the power of the sword, and the power of the law. And if someone else gets control of those three powers, then they hold all the cards. And they got control first of the power of the sword. They figured out how to, well, actually the power of the law came first. They changed the way that we were recognized as citizens. And then from that, they eliminated the power of the sword by taking away the well-regulated militia of the several states. And then they took away the power of the purse by changing our system of economics, where it was under a Federal Reserve system with fiat currency, not real money. And so they got control of the three components, and they did it subtly, surreptitiously, and subversively in such a way that the people didn't even realize. I mean, go and talk to people today, and they still think that we have states' rights. But they were taken away in 1867. It's unbelievable how we've been just duped. And they use the perpetrated ignorance in every possible way to make us think things are so that aren't so. We live in a delusion of non-ignorance. We think we know what we don't know, and what we think we know isn't so.
And everything
that
we know is only what they want us to know.
Yeah, they don't. That's what they don't tell us is the things that we need to know.
Right.
Exactly, Riscal.
Right.
And so the bottom line of this whole thing is we need to take some time and find out what the relevant issues are, and then become aware of them to the extent that we become almost scholars or experts on them. And that's the way we're going to fix it.
I mentioned
It's
something.
going to take every citizen to do that.
I mentioned something at the beginning of the broadcast tonight, and that was you get around the water fountain and you have conversations about you have conversations about football or basketball or baseball or whatever that might be, and many of the people are extremely knowledgeable in all of that stuff. But when it comes to our government, they really don't know spit. And that's really what we're talking about tonight. Somebody pulled the wool over our eyes a long time ago, and they're continuing to do it today. Much of what you're seeing, this insanity of what you're seeing, is all designed into this system. When we wake up and decide that we've had enough, there is a way out, a legal way out, non-violent. I want to make sure people are clear about this. Non-violent way out, a legal way out. It's not conspiracy theory. It's all documented by the very people that we're talking about, by the very government that we're talking about, all documented on whatever happened. And so all we're doing is just trying to rectify something that was done wrong. And in that rectification, things will start to be the way that they're supposed to be for us. We won't have people able to get away with what they get away with like they do today. We won't be talking about the impeachment of a president for nothing more than a phone call. It's just insanity. All right, here we go.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
Here we are. All right, everybody clam up.
Mr. Archie Bunker, speaking in reply to the editorial broadcast last Saturday.
Good evening, everybody. This is Archie Bunker of 704 Hauser Street, veteran of the big war, speaking on behalf of Guns for Everybody. Now, question. What was the first thing that the communists done when they took over Russia? Answer, gun control. And there's a lot of people in this country who want to do the same thing to us here in a kind of conspiracy, see. You take your big international bankers, they want to, masticate the people of this here nation like puppets on a wing. And then when they get that done, turn us over to the communists.
Oh, Archie, I'm glad they put you on a stool. You look taller sitting down.
Now, I want to talk about another thing that's on everybody's mind today, and that's your stick-ups and your skyjackers. Which, if that was up to me, I could end the skyjackers tomorrow.
You could?
All you got to do is arm all your passengers. And then he ain't got no more superiority there. He ain't going to dare to pull out no rod. And then your airlines, then they wouldn't have to search the passengers on the ground no more. They just pass out the pistols at the beginning of the trip, and they pick them up again at the end. Case closed.
That's
Network.
incredible. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Being a dad is an adventure full of special moments.
A cruise?
Surprise!
Unexpected moments.
I got this.
And even awkward moments.
Okay, Dad, thank you.
But every moment you spend with your kids, even the smallest moments, can make the biggest impact on your child's life. So take a moment to be a dad today.
There's a lot of fear in coming back to school. I wasn't sure if I could do it. I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but the teachers, the counselors, they help you. One of the teachers was Miss Araceli. Miss Araceli, she gave me direction. Every single time I had a question, she'll put down whatever she's doing and she'll come over and she'll sit there with you until you get it. Thank you, Miss Araceli. I know you make a difference in people's lives because of the person and teacher you are. I wanted to be here because I wanted to thank you for helping me get a beautiful gift. 50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work. Getting your high school diploma, it is a life-changing experience. It really is.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Have you ever heard of Audible? Audible is a website with hundreds of thousands of audiobooks. They're all high quality, easy to listen to, and, best of all, if you take advantage of a special deal that we've worked out for you, you can get one for free. That's right, a free audiobook of your choice in any genre, simply by going to audibletrial.com/openeyes and signing up for the free trial. It's simple to do, and it would support the shows that we bring to you, and hey, you get a free book out of the whole thing. So why not take advantage of it today? Go to audibletrial.com/openeyes and sign up for the trial.
Ask 10 different scientists about the environment, population control, genetics, and you'll get 10 different answers. But there's one thing every scientist on the planet agrees on. Whether it happens in 100 years, or 1,000 years, or 1,000,000 years, eventually our sun will grow cold and go out. When that happens, it won't just take us. It'll take Marilyn Monroe, and Lao Tzu, and Einstein, and Morobuto, and Buddy Holly, and Aristophanes. All of this was for nothing. Unless we go to the stars.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
While other stations just talk a good game, we win it.
Hey, sounds like somebody's having a lot of fun.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Goes, 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 goes,
Now, from sunny South Florida, it's the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscala. Every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to midnight on the L&M Network. And now, your host, Riscala.
All right, we are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. An honor and a privilege to have you listen in and allow us to share with you some of the information that I come across. You know, one of the things that is kind of difficult to wrap, let me back up a minute. One of the things that was kind of difficult for me to wrap my mind around was, how do we get out of this mess that we're into without an all-out war? And David and Milo both have mentioned that we're already in a war. We're in a civil war. It's been going on for a long time. It just hasn't reached a point of violence, physical violence yet. But it's not much longer, I believe, that we're going to be there if we continue doing what we're doing. Because things are certainly not getting any better with regard to our rights. Yes, there's a lot of things getting better in the country. I'm not going to argue that. What I'm talking about is our freedom. Our freedom is constantly being attacked, day in and day out. And people wonder, how are these people that are supposed to be our representatives, who are supposed to be doing what the majority of the people want, do exactly what they don't want? How do they get away with that? Because the system that we're living under is not the system that was intended for us to live under by the forefathers. It has been usurped. We are living under a deception. And what we have been talking about for the last, I don't know how many, 12, 13 shows now, is the exposure of this deception and a possible viable legal solution to the issue. And that is the restoration of the rights that were stolen from us as states. We reestablish our individual states so that they become the sovereigns that they once were. They hold that degree of authority, which we don't have any longer. And within that restoration, we go by exactly what we were told to do in the Constitution, that we are to have a militia. And the militia wouldn't be strangers, if you will. They would know each other. They would come from our neighborhoods. There would be many different militias. They would be regulated by the state. And then somebody who comes along and gets a wild hair up their kazoo and says, well, we're going to pass this law that says you can't have this gun anymore, the militia would just laugh at him and then, probably carry his butt out of office. They wouldn't be here. That's the kind of system I see in my mind that the forefathers attempted to put in place, that there would be a balance between the citizenry and a balance between them and the government. And the balance would always be in favor of the citizenry, not in favor of the government. And that the government would work on behalf of the citizenry to protect the citizenry's rights, not to stick their nose in every corner of our business and constantly question everything that we do and track us. All of these things that they're doing, they don't have the authority to do any of this. But they got the power, and that's where the imbalance lies. And that's how you and I take the power back. We walk away from the system. We walk away from the deception. And we go to what was originally set forth in place. And there's people who have already done what I'm talking about. There are people who are living this today. It's not an easy road. It's not something that many of us are accustomed to, and that's instant gratification. There's no instant gratification in any of this that I'm aware of. But there is the knowledge in knowing that you have set forth in motion something that will help, maybe if you have children, your children, their grandchildren. If you don't have children, your loved ones, people that you care about. Because it's pretty evident to me, and I'm not a really bright guy, I'm not a rocket scientist, but it's pretty evident to me what's going on today was not intended for us to live under. All right, let me get back. I'll go to David. David, go ahead. You got a comment?
Yeah, one of the things that you said is that we're in the Civil War, but it's not been violent. But when you go back and you actually understand, Riscala, what happened in the early days. I found something this week that was pretty interesting when I was going through the archives. I went back to the archives of the Library of Congress and the United States Congress right after the Civil War, and found a very interesting statute that was passed in 1869 on March the 3rd. And what that particular statute was, it was a rescinding statute. They rescinded an act that they had put in place 2 years before. And what they rescinded was the fact that they took away the funding of the militia of 6 states. Okay, they rescinded this removal of funding of 6 state militias. Congress put the money back again. Well, so the question is, what? I mean, what's going on here? Well, in the Reconstruction Act, it happens to be on March the 3rd, 1869, they reversed something done 2 years before, which would have been on March the 3rd, 1867, which was the day after the Reconstruction Act was passed. They took away the funding of the militia of 6 states. Well, those 6 states coincided with the 6 new military territories that were put in place to then depopulate the citizens of those states so they couldn't vote anymore or hold office in those states. Remember when we were listening to John and Milo weeks ago, they talked about how the senators wanted to depopulate the states. Well, what they were doing there was taking away the ability of the majority of the people of the state to be able to be citizens in that state, to vote, to hold office. over half of the men of those states couldn't hold office anymore or couldn't vote. Imagine that happening today, where half of the men and women of the state of Florida were one day just told, you can't vote anymore. You can't hold office anymore. Your civic privileges and rights and powers are gone. That's what they did in 10 states after the Civil War. And they did it unconstitutionally, illegally, without the authority to do it, because those 10 states were already back in the Union when they were taken back out. And Congress has no power to take them away.
David, that was done intentionally to punish the South?
Of course it was, but the point is that it was illegal.
Yes, it was. Well, and it's the way they created.
Well, it wasn't just to punish the South. It was to create a new citizenship, a citizenship in which you no longer had the authority of the state to be sovereign. Thereby, you'd never be able to do anything like was done before. They couldn't. You would not be able to leave the Union anymore. You would no longer be able to have that authority.
No more succession. That's what the whole intent of that was. But the succession originally started off was illegal and it was constitutional because they had every right to succeed. And I'm not even a Southern.
We seceded from the Articles of Confederation into the Constitution. Of course, it's the states would not have a constitution if there was no such thing as secession of a state.
Well, like I said, David, I'm not a Southerner. My ancestors, I had one that fought for the Stars and Bars and one fought for the Union. And if I would have been there in those days, I would have fought for the Stars and Bars.
Well, I'm a Northerner too. I was born in Connecticut, raised in New York. Came down here 16 years ago. But the point is that it doesn't matter which side of the argument you were on. You can't do illegality. You can't, you can't do something wrong to do something right. It doesn't work that way. And the atrocities that were committed. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that statement right there, David, it might be the overarching theme and, the battle cry of this entire movement. You can't do something wrong, even if it's to do something that you think is right. So I just wanted to say, hear to that.
Can't do the right thing in a wrong way.
Yep. I agree.
I would like to take just a second to say one thing, and I may have said this before on the show. I know I've said it before to other people, but the issue isn't one of the North versus the South. What Congress did during Reconstruction literally was spitting on every grave of every Union soldier that fought for the Union, because Congress went into that war with, and I don't know if the gentleman who's called in has heard this show or not in previous episodes where we've discussed this, but Congress at the outset of the war passed a joint resolution. Both houses of Congress passed a joint resolution which stated that the war was for no purpose of conquest or subjugation, that it was strictly to save the Union and bring those states that had purported to leave back into the Union. And once that objective was accomplished, then the war would be over. And the people that fought, even on the northern side, that fought for saving the constitutional Union, that was their objective. That was what they went in under the pretext of, I'm putting my life on the line and signing up as a soldier in the Union Army for that purpose, because that's what Congress said that their purpose was. But then, as soon as the war was over, less than 2 years after the war was over, Congress decided, and again, this is in the congressional record, you can read the debates where they just openly admit that we're deciding now, after the fact, that, we changed our mind. The war was for a purpose of conquest and subjugation. And ironically, what they were after with Reconstruction, with congressional Reconstruction, was to get the 14th Amendment, at least, presumably, into the Constitution. That was the reason they needed to get enough states that would ratify the 14th Amendment, even if they had to do so by conquering 10 states and occupying them militarily, overthrowing them, et cetera, et cetera. And so they committed all of these constitutional violations toward the objective of getting the 14th Amendment ostensibly ratified. And the 14th Amendment then in turn did to every state in the Union, North and South, East, West, all of them, did to every state in the Union exactly what Congress had just done through military reconstruction in 10 southern states. So Congress was waging a war during Reconstruction, 67 and 68. Congress was waging a war against the entire Union, not just the 10 states that they directly occupied. So, again, it's not a North versus South issue.
I submit that Congress still is waging a war on the citizenry. After the
never stopped.
The Boston bombings, they declared that the United States, the contiguous United States, is now a battleground.
Mm-hmm.
So they still have, us in their sights, basically.
Well, can I'd like to ask a question about what that gentleman just said. Congress was waging war at the time. Is there any evidence to the fact that Congress is being influenced by the Rothschilds?
By the Rothschilds?
Yes.
Well, I mean, there might be circumstantial evidence. Personally, in my own personal opinion, I'm inclined to think that anyone with wealth and power, especially those who were influential in finance at the time, probably had a hand in it. I personally have no doubt that the money powers of the world, not even just of the U.S., but of the world, had a hand in what took place during not only Reconstruction, but even the war itself prior. I think Lincoln was a puppet to those people. I mean, for instance, his, I know it was Salmon P. Chase. It was the same Chase after which the Chase Manhattan Bank is named. But Salmon P. Chase wound up being a Supreme Court justice. He played a very strong hand after the war was over in keeping Reconstruction from being challenged in the courts. And we've talked about this before as well.
Milo, he was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at the time.
He was indeed. Prior to that, we have him also acting as Secretary of the Treasury under Lincoln. So he was an influential man, and clearly he was a banker, and involved with money. Now the Rothschilds, I'm not really qualified to say yay or nay. Were they influential, overtly, covertly, behind the scenes? I'm not really sure.
I wouldn't
doubt it, and I wouldn't be surprised, but I can't say yes.
We can say, though, that the money power is absolutely influencing the political climate, because Mr. Bloomberg is the one who funded the last election in Virginia in order to get to where the Democrats had the control of both of the houses, the bicameral houses of Virginia, and the governorship, and so that these laws could be put in place. They're being put in place right now.
Yeah, bringing it into the modern context in Virginia, absolutely. And his organization, Every Town for Gun Safety or whatever it's called, is ubiquitous. It's acting in Colorado. It's acting in other states as well, even as we speak, trying to achieve the same objectives. So there's, as the Bible says, there's nothing new under the sun. The same things are going on now that were going on 153 years ago or more. I mean,
with a twist.
Money is always trying to rule the world and force its point of view onto everybody.
Same stuff with a twist, though. Just a different flavor. Put a different color to it, so it's a little more camouflaged in some ways, but a little more acceptable in others. We'll make sure that we use the right words so it teases your ears so that you want to hear more. All of that I see going on today, and I think for me, what shook my world completely was the discovery of the war that I served in, the Vietnam War, that it was all based on a lie, that this government went to war based on a lie. Then witnessing them go to war after war after war based on lies again. They did it to Afghanistan, then they did it to Iraq, and then they did it to Libya and Yemen, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, like if I only had had this kind of information many years ago when I went into the service, I would have been whatever they call those guys, draft dodgers. I probably would have. I understand now why some of those people didn't want to go and fight in any capacity. They just won't have anything to do with it whatsoever because the whole thing was illegal. From the beginning it was illegal. So this is what we're talking about today, about the system that's in place. What they're doing to us, we think is illegal, but to them it's fine because the system is broken. The system isn't what we're supposed to be under. If we were under the system, the true system that the forefathers had in place for us, none of this would be occurring. That's what we're trying to achieve now, is to return to that which was originally intended for us, that we would live in a balance with the government. With the thought of a federal government, it would be very small. It wouldn't be a fraction of what we're seeing today. Instead of employing all of these huge numbers of people, I don't even know what the numbers are anymore, but they're huge. They're in the thousands of people. It wouldn't be like that. The states would have a lot more authority. And as a state that has a lot more authority, you as a person who gives the state that authority have more authority. Does it make sense?
Yes.
All right, let me open up the lines while I'm thinking about it. I don't know if anybody else wants to call in. I get listeners. I look at the numbers. We got a lot of listeners, but for whatever reason, they feel like intimidated or something to call in. Don't feel intimidated. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to see if you have a question or comment. So lines are open. Number's 561 440 5174. 561 440 5174. Just stay muted until I can get to you. We'll get to you pretty quick if you call in. Right now I got a couple of slots, so it's no big deal. David, you got a comment?
Well, again, we're just continuing to try to help people become more aware of things that are relevant to this conversation. And, I think that the bottom line of all of this is, what is our civic duty in all of this? What is it that we should be doing where we're stepping up and taking back the responsibility that is ours? That concept of civic duty is something that needs to be reawakened in people's minds. If you become aware that things are going down a certain road, are you just going to let it, continue going that way, or are you going to take your position in the grand scheme of things and do whatever it is you can do? And I suggest the first thing you could do is become aware, become better acclimated to the stuff that, by the way, Rascal, this is our 15th show on this.
Wow.
So, there's that's about 45 hours of broadcast time. 3 hours times 15 is 45. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of information that you've got there in the archives. And I think if people went back and listened through that stuff, that'd be a great step forward. And in addition, go to americasremedy.com and get the DVD series called A Nation Overthrown, the 2-part DVD series. They even have a great supplement book, A Nation Overthrown. And then the third, and then there's other websites. There's ncrepublic.org, which is where all the documentation of North Carolina and how they reestablished the Constitution of North Carolina of 1776 and created the ability for citizenship, such as Milo has and John has and others. And then we have a couple of other websites, one that I've had up for many years called Revitalizing the Second Amendment, rt2a.org. The letter R, T is in Tom, the number 2, the letter A is in Apple.org, has a whole lot of information about the militia and how the militia is governmental, public, made up of all the citizens trained to arms in the state, and is under statutory authority of the legislature. We teach all about how that stuff is all supposed to be. And then one other website I'd suggest is got to do with how we revitalize the committees and give people back their authority in committees in their local communities, what we're calling Citizens Constitutional Advocacy Committees, ccac-us.com. Those are 4 websites that people can go to, and there's more than enough information out there for you to get acclimated, get back on the right page. And then shortly we're going to have a game plan that people will be able to follow. But you can start now to, get some ideas in place in your own minds and get on the right page. I think it's important that we begin to wrap our minds around this thing as a civic duty.
I think
David, I'm glad you brought it back to civic duty. I'd like to read something briefly, if I may. You put me on to some works quite some time ago when I met you by Edwin Vieira, and one of them, I bought a few of his books, and I've started reading the first of the ones that I bought. It's called 3 Rights. I talked to you a little bit about what I'd read the other day, but on the topic of duty, I'd like to read just this short little, it's a piece of a paragraph, because I think this is a very interesting and astute observation that he makes here. People talk a lot about their rights, but they don't talk a lot about their duties. And they don't, I'm not really sure that we give a whole lot of thought to the duties that we have. And so with all of the context of lawful citizenship and lawful states in mind, sort of in the back of our mind, there's a paragraph out of here that I'd like to read a piece of. And it's actually really early in the book. It's on page 8. So he's talking about explaining what are the 3 rights that people inevitably have. And so this begins, it says, the Declaration of Independence quotes, when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce the people under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government. So he's quoted the Declaration there in one of its parts. And he says that quote affirms not only an explicit right and duty, but also an implicit power of the people. But not, and he's saying, but not, it affirms that it's a right and a duty and a power, but quite revealingly, it is not a privilege, for privilege is the opposite of a duty. And because, under the posited circumstances, it is their duty to throw off such government, the people cannot be free or at liberty not to do so. So what he's saying is that because it's a duty, you have a lawful obligation to throw off such government, or, as we would probably be quick to say here, to restore proper government. Because the Declaration, of course, was a Declaration of Independence. It was a document specifically designed for the circumstances of a revolution. I don't believe that is necessary today, but under our circumstances, we have a little bit different situation. What we're looking at is the circumstances we contend with today are different because we have a legal avenue to put back in place something that was lawful, which was taken from us. But Jefferson and, Adams and Franklin, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, and George Mason, I think, might have also been on that committee. I can't remember. There may have been a 5th one. But those gentlemen didn't really have that they didn't have that option. So they were looking at revolution square in the face. It was either that or remain subject to the crown. So our situation today is a little different, but still, the duty that we have to ensure the maintenance and preservation of lawful government is still there. It applies just as equally. And so I just found it very interesting that he says quite revealingly, because it is a duty and a power, it is not a privilege, because under the posited circumstances, it is their duty to throw off such government that people cannot be free or at liberty not to do so. Anyway, that just struck me as a particular poignant passage, and you brought up duty, so I thought that I would make a contribution there from Vieira's.
That's a good point.
How few of us actually take that duty seriously? Some of us have. Some of us have decided, I'm just speaking for myself, I decided over a decade ago that this was going to be something that I couldn't avoid any longer. And I'm going to do everything within my power to try to figure out what it is we have to do and then help others to see it as well. To me, this isn't optional. This isn't something that you can avoid. And, you know, it even gets to the place where people think I'm fanatical about it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Because, look at, when Abraham Lincoln was elected president, I saw in the writing that I was looking at this week, I saw I can't remember what it was. It was something where the people of Florida. Oh, it was in the Constitutional Convention where they were seceding, and they said this fanatical radical abolitionist that's now president. And, you know, whether, you know, you buy that or not isn't the point. It's that they saw that this guy was fanatical about what he was going to do. And and you know, if people like Lincoln and even the people of the South in seceding, they were coming to a place of realizing that this is serious stuff. If we don't realize how serious this is, and my journey began when Rascal, you mentioned the thugs. I had the thugs of the IRS stealing my money and doing it without, just strictly because they arbitrarily decided a certain thing. And that was in 1998. And I thought, you know what, something's not right here. How can they just confiscate your wealth simply because somebody comes along and says, I have a right to your money because I'm the government? If somebody was to come up to my door of my house and walk in my house and say, hey, I'm going to take your money, we call that robbery.
Yeah.
But if the government does it, we call that something we're obligated to. Not that they don't have that right under certain circumstances, because we need to be protected. We need to have infrastructure and so on. But when there's rules that they're supposed to follow too. And when they're not following their own rules that they have formulated, then that is a very serious problem. And if we are not willing to stand up and say, you are not allowed to do that, then we're going to get what's coming to us. That's enslavement.
And that's exactly what we're seeing today. We're seeing enslavement. Again, my opinion is, not only my opinion, but this has been found by some of the courts, that we are not required to pay an income tax. Well, don't pay it and see what happens. Just don't go, and they're supposed to be truthful about things. Well, if you really know the truth, and look down at the bottom of the whatever form it is, and it doesn't say sign here. It says please. I think it does. I think it still does. Please sign here. So what they're doing is they're deceiving you and making you think you have to do this. Now, I know there's some cases where they're authorized to tax. Money that makes money, they're authorized to tax that. But the sweat of our brow, they're not authorized to do that. That's slavery to me. That's the true meaning of slavery. They're reaching into your pocket from the work that you have done and taking from that you have worked for. They have no authority to do that. There's other means for them to make money. And their whole purpose really is to do nothing more than to make sure that we are secure and that they defend our rights. That's basically it. That's maybe an oversimplification, but that's basically what they're here to do. That's what they're supposed to be doing. They don't do those anymore. We don't see that anymore.
I just think it's ironic, Riscala, that you said there's other ways for them to make money, and the first thing that popped into my head was, they're printing presses.
No, I mean, yeah, that's true. But I mean, there's other ways. There's tariffs that they can, I'm wondering all this money that this president has says that's coming in from China. Where do you guys either one? I'm not trying to be facetious. You guys either one of you know where does that money go? He's talking about. I think he's into the billions, tens of billions of dollars, or maybe hundreds of billions of dollars that we're supposed to be getting from China or something. I really don't understand.
Oh, it's going to go into the big black hole. There's no doubt about it.
So I mean, I think under the original plan is that the government would do business with other governments, and that's how they make their money. That's why they didn't need our money. They had their own way of I like Milo's. Hey, just go print them up. What the heck, But back then money was real money. It was if it was paper, it was a certificate for some kind of precious metal. Silver or gold were the two most common, but there were others as well. So if you had a paper dollar per se, it didn't say what it says today, Federal Reserve note, which is just a fancy IOU. It said silver certificate. And you take that to a Federal Reserve Bank and give them that silver certificate, they were required to give you a silver dollar if you wanted a silver dollar. And when you got the silver dollar, it was 0.999 silver, and it was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, a little over 3/4 of an ounce of silver. So it was almost an ounce of silver, which would go today for at least $13. Now look at the dollar that we have today. We would have to take 13 of our dollars to buy one of those dollars. That's how they've ripped us off.
Riscala, actually, you were talking about the devaluation of the dollar earlier, and it's been some years since I've looked at that. But one of the things that I remember from, I don't know, maybe somewhere between 4 and 6 years ago, I remember doing some research into this when I first started getting into, trying to stock up on a little bit of silver. I'm not a big monetary kind of guy. I mean, that's never been my thing. But
me neither.
I do appreciate it, and I do have an interest in it. But back then, when I was looking this up, I found out that the dollar today, well, as of, we'll just say 6 years ago, is literally worth 4 cents of the dollar in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was implemented.
Less than that. Less than that now.
Well,
I figured it might be, but,
It's about 2 cents now.
Is it really?
Wow.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the dollar that I grew up with was a silver certificate, and I remember over a weekend my dad wanted me to cut the yard. I said okay, and I cut the yard, and he gave me 2 paper dollars for cutting the yard, which back then was quite a bit of money. I didn't want the paper dollars. I wanted to save the money, and I liked the feeling of the silver. The silver dollars were big and heavy. And I had asked him for a couple of silver dollars. He said, I'm sorry, I don't have any silver dollars. Take it to the bank. We had a Federal Reserve branch right around the corner from us, a couple of blocks away. He said, take it there Monday and tell the lady, and she'll give you one. So I went there after school, took my 2 paper dollars and asked her for 2 silver dollars. She gave me 2 silver dollars. It would take us $13 today to buy that $1. So we're 1/113th just in the short time that I've been around of that dollar.
I hate to tell you this, is more like almost 20 now. I bought one just about 4 weeks ago.
Well, that's a if you bought one, that's a collector's item. I'm saying silver.
No. This was actually on its face value.
So an ounce of silver is close to $20 now. Well, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yep.
I know it goes up and down. So we're 1/20th now of what we were then, just in that short period of time, and people don't realize. And it's much worse than that. If you think about the packaging in the stores, they've all reduced their packaging very subtly. so that people don't really see it. It's a little thinner, it's a little shorter. You look at the soap, it's got a curve to it where it didn't have a curve before. A little here, a little there. You don't get as much as you used to get, yet the price went up just a little bit anyway. It's all a deception. The whole thing is a deception in order for them to transfer wealth from us to them. Again, I believe in the system that was originally set in place. Much of this they just wouldn't be able to do this to us. Their ability to be able to pull these kind of things off just wouldn't be there, because we would be a much more unified nation. The communications that we would have with each other would be much more beneficial towards our future than arguing over asinine things that we're arguing over today. It's just crazy. Go ahead, Milo. It'll take him a second. He's got to unmute his mic. You there, Milo? Maybe we put him on permanent mute. Or he put himself on permanent mute. All right, well, we can go ahead and take a break. Let's go ahead and we'll take a break. You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show. Tonight I have David and Milo with me. What we're talking about something that happened in the late 1860s, the Reconstruction Act. And what did that do to this country? Well, this nation was basically overthrown. And we're not living under the system that our forefathers intended for us. We're living under deception. And we're telling people that not only are we living under deception, but we're not presenting the problem without a viable solution. Now, I think that's important for people to understand. We're not sitting here telling you about a problem with no viable solution. There is a viable solution. The solution is quite simple, and not only that, the solution is legal, and it's just a restoration. It is a return to what originally was intended for us as a people. Not very difficult. Here we go.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show on the LNM Network. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
Grace has some pretty stellar arms, like Serena Williams good, but her face is pretty disgusting.
Someone please tell him to go back into his closet and leave us alone.
Britney's face is so stupid and I hate her so much. It's like a scientist created her in a lab to annoy humanity and didn't even do that good of a job.
Megan reminds me of a troll doll that came to life intent on killing us with her stupidity.
Why is Grace's head so big? It definitely has nothing to do with how smart she is and probably everything to do with how bloated she is.
He's so funny. Just kidding. Who would find this disfigured flamingo funny?
Never post a selfie of yourself. You look so ugly.
The only reason you have so many views is because we think you're a freak and we can't look away.
Megan is the main reason that the world sucks so much.
I would rather get cancer than listen to another Trevor Moran song.
You are a mistake. You should have never been born.
Drown yourself in a shallow puddle, please.
Wow, I hope she's sterile.
These really stopped being funny a long time ago.
You're so much more than the things that people say about you.
Those people have no right to say cruel things to you to make themselves feel better.
It's okay that you sound different than everyone else.
That's what makes you so special.
We will not tolerate it. We will not tolerate it.
We will not tolerate it.
We will not tolerate it.
Every day, people make me feel like I stand out simply because of the way that I look.
Every day, people make me feel small.
Every day, I face the cruel words of bullying.
And every day, people tell me that I'm brave for enduring this humiliation.
But we're not the brave ones.
It's the ones that say no to the bullying.
The witnesses.
If we all join together, there's nothing that we can't do.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
When we see bullying online,
We will let the world know that we're going to take action with the I.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
Our actions will overpower cruel words.
I am a witness.
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 There is power in words.
But it's nothing compared to the power of the actions that we put behind our words.
Visit eyewitnessbullying.org to learn more.
I am a witness, and so are you.
I'm gonna stand by you.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
We have ignition. Strap in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscala, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight. And now your host, Riscala.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill.
All right, we are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. An honor and a privilege to have you listen in. I am here every Saturday night from 9 to midnight. And you can find me on the home base, www.wcetfm.com. You can also find me on Facebook. If you go on Facebook and give me a like on the Red Pill Reality Show, it will help us to remain relevant in searches. You can also listen to us, believe it or not, from a link on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, click on Contact Us, and you'll be linked over to our server, get the live show. And then you can always call in as well. If you have unlimited calling, you have an option of calling in to listen. This is not to call into the board here, but to listen is 701-719-9704. We are a subscriber-supported station, so we need all the help we can get. We'd be very grateful to those of you who would spread the word about the network, WCETFM.com. We're looking for donations. We're looking for subscribers. That's really what keeps us going is subscribers. I'm doing, I think I'm into 6 years. Michael Vera, who is the founder of the network, he's going into, I think, his 12th year. And it has been through the graciousness of the listeners. And we're ever so grateful for you guys. And just reaching out to you and let you know we still need your help. Please remember to spread the word. Get over to www.wcetfm.com. You can listen there. You can donate there. You can subscribe there. All of the above. All right, so let me welcome my two guests back. It's Milo and Dave. Let me go to Milo for just a moment. Milo, before I go back to Dave, did you have a comment before we went on the break? I wasn't sure.
Well, I was. Yeah, I did. I didn't know if I had my phone on mute or not. There was some confusion. But I wanted to go back to something that our guest, the caller, and forgive me, I cannot remember what his name was.
Ken.
Ken.
Yep.
Okay. He had asked kind of early on in the conversation, he had asked how much longer do we expect this to go on? And I mean, I've kind of wanted to say, I didn't really have an opportunity to say until I just made it up, took the opportunity. But the thing that comes to my mind, and I think that's a relevant and important question, how long do we expect this to continue? And something that Frederick Douglass once said is what comes immediately to my mind. And I think that it's important because his question is looking for, an avenue forward, a way to solve this issue. And I mean, I assume that's what it's born from. That seems to be the indication to me. But Douglass made a statement at one point in time. He said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out," and this is the important part, "find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue until they are resisted with either words or blows or with both." And so the answer to Ken's question is as long as we let it go on. How long do we have to endure this? Until we decide we're not going to anymore. Yeah. And I just felt like it was important to come back to that question and provide him with some kind of an answer there, because really the whole beauty of this entire position is that it puts the power back in the hands of the people of the states. It puts the power back in the hands of us. And so, we just have to make a decision. What are we willing to put up with? What are we willing to tolerate? And when we decide we're not willing to tolerate these wrongs and these injustices anymore, then it's important for people to know that there is a proper and a viable and a lawful way for us to rectify this situation.
Yep. I think it was Bill Cooper who said, what you allow will continue, or something like that. And so it's right along the line of what you're saying. Until the people decide, absolutely. Huh?
I just said absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Till the people decide, this is, and again, I know it's redundant, but I think it's important for it to be redundant. And that is, there is a viable way for us to get out of this, a legal way, a nonviolent way. I think to me that's the highest priority of this whole thing. A nonviolent way, a legal way that will be recognized. They have to recognize. It's their documents by this existing system. And that's really what we're just trying to tell people, that we don't have to put up with this insanity. It's not, this is all we have. Because that's not the case. We do have options. And I didn't, with all the digging around and that I've done, all the research that I've done, I never came close to any of this stuff. I never heard of any of this stuff. I don't think I would have ever known about any of this stuff had not one of my friends told another friend, who started to introduce me to some other people, and come to find out all of this has been kind of wool pulled over our eyes, so to speak, for the longest of times. And I understand from my life's experience, if you're dealing with something that is, let me put it to you this way. This is a better analogy because most people have computers. I used to fix computers for a living. That was one of the things I've done in the past. I built my first computer in 1985. Been around them for a while. If you get them, it used to be, the last couple of years I stayed away from them just because of the continued education required to stay on the edge of everything. And I just didn't, I'm getting older and my hands are tied up with other stuff. So anyway, the short of it is, there was a time if you got a critical virus, the only way that you could get rid of that virus, it had now corrupted your system. And the only way you're going to be able to get rid of that virus is to truly get rid of it is to do what's called a low-level format. That means for us that went to school and had blackboards, there was a time that you could take the eraser and you could write something on the blackboard and then take the eraser and it would kind of erase it, pretty much erase it. But if you look carefully, you could still see it. So when you look at a low-level format, what you're doing is, instead of taking that eraser, because every once in a while the teacher would have me take I think it was a sponge or a damp towel, and wipe the board down completely, get all the excess chalk so you're down to a clean slate. Then you would reinstall the operating system, and now you would have a non-corrupted operating system. Well, that's kind of like what we're talking about. We're talking about starting with a clean slate so that we don't have the residuals that this system has. We start with a system that was already laid out for us and that existed for almost 100 years, but that was stolen, taken out from, like the rug pulled out from under your nose kind of thing. That's really what we've been talking about for these last, my gosh, how many, David? How many times? 13, 14, 13?
15.
15 times.
We're on a roll.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you guys, this is vital. To me, this is absolutely vital. This is something that I have been asking for, just kind of when you sit there and you're contemplating what's going on. I know for me, I'm describing myself. I'm looking at something and I read a story or something and I'm contemplating, how in the world could this go on and on and on? There has to be a better way. There has to be a better way. I don't know how long I'd been saying that. And then I met with Angel, and Angel introduced me to David, and David introduced me to John, and John introduced me to Milo, and Milo, between all that, I met Thompson,
Paul.
I can't think, Paul, and Chrissy, people who are all actively involved in what we're talking about. And really, again, it's very basic. What we're saying is the system that is in place is not the system that was designed for us, and that is why a lot of this insanity doesn't make sense to people, because we're deceived. Any contract that you are under, if it is under a deceptive manner, that contract is null and void. So what I'm saying to you is that, American citizen, you've been pulled into a contract in a deceptive manner. That contract is null and void. The purpose of you being an American citizen is to serve the rights of the Congress, and whatever the Congress wants, you're subservient to them because they created us. That's where I see a big difference in the way that all of this works. In the way it was originally done, I don't know who explained this to me. I think it was Milo. Milo, was it you to explain it to me that we are the ones who created the government and then the government created us, right? Who told me that?
I have discussed that, yes. It could have also come from John, I'm not sure. But yes, absolutely, we've talked about it.
That's where the whole deceptive thing is. We the people. You look at the Declaration of Independence. It doesn't say the Founding Fathers' names until it's signed off at the very bottom. When it starts off as we the people. And somewhere along the line, that got thrown in the trash can. We are not. We were the people who created the government, and then somewhere along the line, all of that was turned on its head, and the government said. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the basic differences in being a citizen of the state versus a citizen of the federal government. That being a citizen of the state, your loyalty is to the state. Your state has sovereignty, and you have greater authority. I'm trying to word it in the best way I can. When we're under the system that we're under now, the state has created the American citizenship. So you are under the I can't think of the word. It's getting old, getting late. You're subservient to the Congress because they created the American citizen. So there's a big difference between the two, where you have a state citizen who has created the federal government and done their part in the creation of the federal government. Then you have the American citizen who the government has created using their system. So one is subservient to the other. The creator is always the higher of the two. The creation is subservient to the creator. I hope that's making sense. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to
Yep.
me. I
Okay.
think you hit the nail on the head.
That's one of the basic big differences we're talking about here. The people made the government back then. And then it got turned on its head, and the government made the citizen. I should say the citizens made the government, and then the government made the citizens. That's where we've lost our power, our ability to take back what is rightfully ours. That's why these maniacs can sit there and literally break their oath to office, yet retain their seat. And there were days that have gone by now, sadly, that would never happen. That would never happen. They wouldn't even think of that because they know they get run out of town at the very minimum, probably tarred and feathered next. And then the worst thing is they wouldn't be around here anymore. They take, what do they call it? I can't think of the word. Anyway, they just wouldn't be around anymore. But that, because of the conditioning and the system that we're living under, all of that combined together, people are like accepting of all of this. And even though there are circumstances where people are standing up against it, they're still spitting in the face of the people and laughing all the way to the bank while they're doing it. This guy's still in office. Even a senator from his own state has requested his resignation after all of this insanity that he's declared war on his own citizenry. It's the most insane thing in the world. They wouldn't be able to do this under the original system. Am I right, Dave? Under the original system, the governor could not pull this off. Am I right or wrong?
No, and part of the reason is because there would be an accountability of the representatives to the people. I mean, the bottom line of this whole thing is, when are we going to get back to where the public servants are public servants?
Amen. And they're recognized as public servants. I'm tired of them being referred to as leaders.
Yep. The thing I'd like to share here as we're winding down is, we've talked a lot. We got 45 hours of material, including your, monologues you do at the beginning of the show. But but still a lot of hours. And the question becomes, when are we going to be able to do something with this? And people need to realize what's going on in Virginia is really just the stair step to what's coming in other states. And I'm actually pretty anxious that the state of Florida here shortly is going to do something ridiculous and pass something so that we can move forward. But people need to be realizing that this isn't just about talking. We're looking to put together a plan to get the people back in the right position. And that's what's exciting about this, is that we really do have something that has the ability to achieve a remedy. That's the part, America's Remedy is the name of the organization. And that remedy is even becoming more broadly tweaked and honed and put into a place where we can do something with it. What it starts with, though, is people being willing to start doing some studying on their own, and then being ready that whenever we want to start joining together and getting people enrolled and working forward toward revitalizing the state governmental structures, that we've got the ability to do it. And that's what's coming. We've got to move from the de facto put in place by the bayonet and the barrel of a gun government to the de jure being restored, the actual government as it was originally created. And that's what's coming down the pike here shortly. Otherwise, we're just,
It'll be more of the same. It'll be the same thing, just on a different day.
I was going to use one of those bad colloquials, but I'm not going to use it. We'd be doing something that went into the wind.
There you go.
We don't want to do that. We want to have something that's actually got substance to it. That's going to actually bring about a better future. And by the way, I believe we can have a better future.
Amen. So do I. I wouldn't be going through all this if I didn't believe in it. All right, my friend, I want to thank you for taking the time to call in. Let me get to Milo and say goodbye to him. And we'll catch up this next week, and you can tell me about some of the things, and we'll just keep doing it. We'll keep telling people. I think this is one of the most important things that I can do in the position that I'm in, is to tell people what's going on and give people some hope, because I'm telling you, for a while there, I'm going, there's no hope here. This is futile. Until I found out about all of this, and that was like a vitamin shot in the arm, if you will, with regard to hope, because it's pretty bleak. You just watch what's going on; it's pretty bleak. Anyway, thank you, Dave, and I'll catch up with you this coming week. Milo, let me give you an opportunity to say goodbye before we go. Any special comments or anything like that?
No, not in particular. Just that I agree with David and you as well, that it's important to realize that this is a solution and there is a reason to have hope. It's not foolish hope. We actually do have an opportunity here and the ability, if we'll just take it upon ourselves, to do what is required of us in order to realize this solution. And, with regard to any of your guests that might be listening, or any of those that called in, if they want further information, David already did, but I'll one more time just give out some websites. The americasremedy.com, the ncrepublic.org. Both of those are websites of organizations that I am personally affiliated with and have worked with for years. And then there's also the RT2A that David mentioned. I've not spent a lot of time looking over that website, but if David feels like that's a website that's worth mention and it has information about lawful constitutional militia, I would say check it out. And then also the caucus website, which is TCAC-US, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
And I believe that is a .com.
That's correct.
CCAC-US.com.
Yep.
And it has some very informative videos. I think there's a set of about 20 videos. But definitely check out those websites, and people should just keep striving toward a solution, because, as David said, we're working on something with an actionable path forward here. This is not just an academic.
It's not theory.
discussion.
Yeah, it's not just talk. It's actual life, things that are actually done. Milo, thank you, my friend. God bless you. Wish you an awesome weekend, what's left of it, and we'll catch up during the week with Dave and have you back. Just keep talking about it. Just keep spreading the word. Get more people involved.
Thank you too, Riscala. I appreciate everything that you do.
All right, my friend. God bless you. Appreciate it. Okay, you have been listening to the Red Pill Reality Show. Tonight I've had David and Milo on. Had Ken call in for a short time. What we're talking about really is a viable legal solution. This is not theory. This is not somebody's hypothetical idea. It may have started that way, but that's not what it is. It's something that is viable. It's something that is happening. Some people are living this today, what we're talking about. So walking away from a corrupt system and going back into a system that allows you as an individual more power than we have now. That's one of the greatest thefts that has happened to us, and it's something that we need to get back to. So we presented it to you. With regard to archives, I have plenty of archives. If you go to the Red Pill Reality Show on Facebook, you'll find an archive of this show as well. That archive will be set up probably by noon tomorrow. Anyway, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. You've been listening to the Red Pill Reality Show. We are out of here.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.